Everyone. Welcome to the Valley Community Policing Council meeting. So far, only one of our panel is here. I see Councilor Isaac Benton, and we do need to go over. We don't go by Robert's rules because we're a different organization, but we can call for the meeting to be called to order. So all those in favor, it's only me, Tom, and Dick currently that are council members. So are you approval for going on with the meeting, bringing the meeting to order? I just want to go very quickly. We need to approve the minutes and the agenda. I sent the agenda out to everybody. I sent the agenda to the mailing list also. Apologies for the typos. When you proof your own stuff, it just doesn't work. I know that from bitter experience. And apologies for the cat that's going to be a nuisance through the whole meeting. Old business, we still have some recommendations that we're working on that are in planning stages. I will send out details of them to the mailing list. New business, we were considering going over police service aid training and admission into the academy and seeing if that was worthy of some kind of recommendation. So we're going to look into that. And that's all I have. I see Mr. Nieto has joined us. Welcome. But Councillor Benton, I know that you're pushed for time because you have another meeting. So, hi.
Hello, good to see everyone's face here on the little screen.
I have some questions, but why don't we start, Mr. Nieto? Why don't you you were planning to put up a display of the mayor's plans?
Sorry about that. Yeah. Hi. I can get that up very quickly, and I also regrettably also have to run off to another meeting in a little bit here. So I'm Councilor Benton. I'm not sure what your time is. I might have a little more time than you. So if however you guys need to do this. So.
Well, this is
Madam Chair, I've got a good half hour set aside here, so it's okay for Aaron to go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Councilor. And I have a good amount of time as well, but I want to make sure that I get to everything.
I gotta get a cat out of here.
So I just dropped our Metro Crime Initiative in the chat, and I'm also going to share my screen so I can talk about this as well. I just have to find it on here.
I can put it up if you'd like.
Yeah, that's the problem with having so many things open on my computer. I can never find what I'm looking for, but I think I've got it now. There we go. Okay, so
yeah,
I will try to be brief in my presentation and leave time for questions. So our biggest priority right now is our Metro Crime Initiative in terms of what we're doing in crime, and that is a holistic approach on working with both the City Council, APD, the state, the county, UNM, CNM, and a lot of local providers in the area that deal in a lot of these areas. One specific one that we've been working with a lot is Endorphin Power Company. They've been really great in helping us get a lot of these initiatives pushed. So it's, as you can see here, it falls under a few very large groups: fighting crime, reducing gun violence, closing the revolving door, strengthening diversion, rebuilding behavioral health systems, expanding violence intervention programs. So I'm going to bring up a little checklist really quick. So this is kind of the pamphlet that outlines everything that we're doing with the Metro Crime Initiative. We convened this over the summer and brought together all of these different entities and said, this is not just a city problem. It's not just a county problem. It's not a state problem. it's everybody's problem, and pointing the finger and saying, oh, the DA isn't doing this, the city isn't doing that, the county isn't doing that, is not going to get us anywhere. The only way we're going to solve this problem is to work together. So Mayor Keller convened these groups together, and we came up with these 40 action items to be done by everybody. I think sometimes people see it and think that the city is going to be doing all of this on their own, which would be a Herculean task to try to do. So as you can see here, fighting crime is obviously the first one that's going to come up because it's the most in the front. It's something that we're trying to stop and see every day, and I'm sure all of you are very familiar with in the CPC. And the ones with circles next to them are things that we're asking for in the legislature, be it funding, be it passing of certain bills. We actually have a few up this evening in a House committee that seems to be going quite late. But those are these are all here as big things that we're working on with our partners. Hiring more officers has always been something that we've been working on throughout our administration and now into the second term. Fully funding our public safety agencies, which I think we've been doing a pretty good job of keeping our agencies well funded. It's there's a lot that goes into it, and not all of it is just a lot of it is technology, and I think a lot of people think of when you're funding the police, it's this notion that it's militarized weaponry and whatnot, which is not what we do. In the city council actually passed ordinance to not do that. So we're looking at ways to make policing safer for both our officers and the community with a lot of new technology. So for one instance that one thing that I think has been very important that we've added in is Shot Spotter. I think that's been very helpful to us, where we can pinpoint where shots are fired, and we can get there and collect casings and find and have a better way of finding where those shots are fired, and hopefully being able to catch the assailants that are doing it. Because previously we'd get a call from a neighbor who's saying, there's shots being fired, and we're not capable of tracking those things with our ears. It's very difficult to hear that out. So I think that's one of the big things that we're working on, and that has been very helpful. Another one is fixing the 24/7 ankle monitoring bracelets. That those they'd been used but had not been monitored. So we're trying to make sure that's funded and make sure that that's actually happening. Studying gun violence as a public health issue, I think that's also a very important thing to look at, because it's not just, crime can be much more than just, between, the individuals that it's happening with. So studying gun violence as a public health issue really gives us a broader scope into what we're doing. So another two that I think are also really helpful for our end, especially with the Gateway Center going to be up and running in the next year, is creating a 24/7 sobering center and expanding Turquoise Lodge. So right now, officers can already take individuals to the Turquoise Lodge, but it's not enough space. So we're working with them to expand. To one of the bills that is being heard tomorrow, it's either tomorrow or Saturday, because the schedules have been kind of changing a lot, has been strengthening gun crime penalties. Detaining gun offenders until trial is one that is also going through, and strengthening gun storage laws, which I think a lot of people, both who are, very strongly in support of the Second Amendment, and those that find that we have too many firearms on the street, can agree upon, is that just managing your firearms in a safe manner is really important. So I'm going to move my little box here so I can see this last section, which I think is actually one of the most important in my opinion, and I think it's something that can really benefit our community as a whole, which is expanding violence intervention programs. Because what we're seeing time and time again is we get these people that are committing lesser crimes, they're getting out, but they're getting themselves into a life of crime. And once you have a violent crime record, that makes it extremely difficult for you to ever really get out of the penal system. So trying to catch these individuals before that happens, before they find themselves in a situation where they're desperate enough to armed rob somebody, or God forbid, kill somebody. I think those are really big, important issues there. So we're asking for funding for our CABQ violence intervention program, and that is on the agenda today for House Public Affairs. And I'm not sure if they've heard it yet. It was a pretty lengthy agenda, so I just got off now, maybe about 5:45, and they'd still not heard it yet. And that meeting's been going since 2:30. So hopefully that'll be heard soon. Expanding the violence intervention program statewide. I think we've been seeing a lot of good coming from this. Our team, Jerry and Angel, have both really been excellent on this. And I'm not sure if they've spoken to the Valley CPC, but if not, I would definitely suggest having them talk about the work that they do. It's fantastic. I've seen a number of their presentations, and I think they just really do an amazing job.
Are you speaking about restorative justice?
So that would be the next one down.
We've had them, the violence intervention program. I know they presented in another CPC, but we'll certainly reach out to them.
Yes.
Restorative justice we have had present.
Wonderful, wonderful. So Jerry Bajicha is the person in VIP that you want to speak to. And I'm sorry if I'm moving kind of quickly. I just want to make sure that I get time for any questions. That's all, I always want to, hear what is important to, because each CPC is going to have something that's important to them that may not be important to the others. So I always kind of want to make sure that I reach those. Like, obviously crime as a whole is an overarching concern for everybody in the city, but there are certain things that are specific to the Valley that are not going to be the same as the foothills or the Heights or the West Side. So I if there's anything else you'd like me to cover on MCI, I would be more than happy to, but if not, I would love to stand for questions.
There are 2 questions or 3 questions in the chat. Let me go up and find them. Somebody asked about needle exchange, if that could be part of the crime initiative.
I can certainly make a note of that and ask about that. I know there's been a lot of back and forth on needle exchange. So I know we've got a program in the Southeast that is doing it, and we get good and bad responses on it. Some people say it's bringing in an undesirable population to their neighborhood. Some people are saying, well, at least we're not it's a little bit of a chance to not find so many needles in our parks. It gives people another opportunity to drop off their needles and get clean needles. So also providing safety to these individuals. So when our hospitals are not being filled up with people getting sick from using dirty needles. So I will certainly bring that up to the team. So I'm going to take a quick note here. Okay.
Another person, Abby Long, actually, who was a member of our CPC and is a brilliant advocate for youth and for other groups, Abby, but I know you're a brilliant advocate for youth, and that you would like to hear more about the social services branch of APD that is supposed to be being developed and how that is going to access these resources. Is there more funding being allocated to that?
So I believe that would be the ACS, the
Yes.
Albuquerque Community Safety Department. And so right now we have a good team up and running. Obviously we need more, and there's unfortunately a shortage of social workers that is also putting a little bit of an impediment on this. But our team has been doing a lot of great work. I got a call from an officer that I know on Christmas Eve telling me, we need help getting these individuals housing. They have these issues, but like I can't help. So I got on the phone with ACS, and they got somebody out there as quick as they could to help these individuals. They are working 24/7 at this point, but they're still a small team. So it's not as robust as we're hoping to be at some point, but I think we are seeing a really good response from the team. And it's really been helpful to have this opportunity for individuals who are not dangerous, who are just in need of assistance, to have somebody that they feel comfortable to talk to, and also to keep our officers able to be fighting crime. I've asked a lot of officers about this, and they've told me, a lot of their time is spent helping out with people that I don't prefer the term, but it's the easiest term to use, is down and out. And so they're spending a lot of time on that when there's other things that they could be doing to combat crime. And now we have a team that can actually get these individuals to the places they need to go. We're not sending them to jail. We're getting them to the hospital. We're getting them to Turquoise Lodge. And our officers obviously try to do that, but they've got a hefty lift as it is. And expecting them to also be social workers on top of that is unfair to them when they've got a huge job to do already that, I wouldn't envy having to do myself.
I can partly speak to that also because I was at a downtown ECHO meeting this morning, and if the people here that have not been to the ECHO meetings, and you have the time to do it, if you're free during the day, they're extraordinary meetings for the downtown safety area where they address a lot of topics, and there are quite a lot of people from the organization, from the ACS, and they did emphasize that it's going to grow and there's going to be more personnel, and it's going to happen very soon.
Absolutely, yeah. Just to add to that, Project ECHO it's a really great group to be a part of. I've gotten to do a few of those meetings as well. I don't get to go as often as I'd like, but it is a wealth of information on what's going on in the Valley CP, in the Valley Area Command.
Just very quickly, because we want to give Councilor Benton the time to speak, there's one more really excellent question from Philip Jameson to the hosts and panelists. Actually, two excellent questions. Which parts of this do you see being active in the next year? And what measurable results are we looking at to judge our success?
So, a lot of this, some of these ones with circles next to them, I think a lot of them have an opportunity to make it through the session this time around. It's a 30-day, it's always a whirlwind. It's all supposed to be budget or to the call of the governor. And she is in support of a great many of these things. So a lot of them, it is dependent on what we can do with the legislature, like cracking down on chop shops. That has been a big problem with auto theft here. Cars get stolen and then they get chopped up, and there's nothing that we can ever do about it because there's no trail there. Once it's chopped up and sold into parts, there's nothing we can do. So we are working with the legislature on that. I think that is something that we can definitely work on. But I'm gonna be very blunt about this. Sometimes with the legislature, there is a notion that this is an Albuquerque problem. So Albuquerque should fix Albuquerque problems. But it's not just an Albuquerque problem, because Albuquerque is an economic driver of the state. People from around the state have to do their business here. They don't have the ability to do a lot of their shopping or a whole host of different things. So they come to the city to do those things. And then, their cars are getting stolen, they're encountering violence. There's any number of things that anybody could experience there. So, this is kind of a little plea here that if anybody is interested, and I know Kelly's been blasting this out for us, if you are interested in standing in support or writing to any members of any of these committees in the legislature, please do so. So that way we can show that this is this is something that we need. And yes, this is happening in Albuquerque, but it affects Gallup, it affects Santa Fe, it affects Santa Rosa. I guess you could make the argument that it's, Cruces is not having that much of effect on it from us, but it's still, if Albuquerque is having this trouble, it could spread very easily. And it is really a detriment to the state if we don't get this under control, because as I did mention, so many people have to do their business in Albuquerque.
Okay, one more question. I have a very brief question, then there's one more question. This is a wish list. I see it as a wish list, and you have the ear of the mayor. So I'm just curious, of all of these, which have the mayor's priority? I realize all 40 points are kind of priority, but if you could get 2 things done, what would they be? Or 2 or 3? Let's give them a bit of allowance.
So I would definitely say violence intervention is one that has been on the top of our radar. It's extremely important. It helps out generationally, but it's not solving the problem in the forefront. And we can discuss how that crime fighting is, how to make crime fighting more easier to do, or make it something manageable. But I mean, honestly, funding our public safety departments is a huge one. It's very important that we are able to get them the technologies they need to do their job safely and effectively. So I'd say that's probably another one. That includes hiring more officers. It's as I'm sure Commander Norris can attest to, hiring officers right now is very, very difficult. It's a hard climate to get people to want to be an officer. And then, Albuquerque has its own specific issues around that. So those I think are very big, important things. I mean, it really is hard to just pick 3. So I'll stop talking now so Councilor Benton can have time to speak. I can stay until 6:45. So if there's something that comes up that anybody wants after Councilor Benton's done addressing the group, I would be more than happy to answer a few more questions before I have to jump off to my next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Nieto. This has been very useful, very informative, and I hope some of these things do make it through the legislature. I really hope.
Of course. Thank you all so much here.
It's a thing with feathers.
Turn off my screen share and mute myself, and I will wait and see if anybody else needs anything else after Councilor Benton. I muted myself before I was done talking. Thank you guys so much.
Councillor Benton, I asked you here tonight for 2 reasons. One is you're our councillor, you're our man. The other one is you're currently president of the council. We're not asking for budgetary specifics. We know you're not on the budget committee, and even then it's probably in early stages of discussion. Now, you've seen the list, the 40 points, I take it.
Are you talking about the Metro Crime Initiative?
The Metro Crime Initiative.
Yeah, of course.
So there seems to be the Rebuild Behavioral Health System and the Expand Violence Intervention programs are the ones, to my mind, those items need funding approved from the council. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So again, the question with the wish list, which would you see as more important to fund?
Yeah, well, I'll just start with the the behavioral health question. The county is bringing in a whole lot more money than the city is with regard to that. And not to say that it's all on them or anything like that. I just got off of the ABCGC meeting where they talk about that behavioral health initiative, and it's bringing in, let's say, I'm not going to say that it's enough. I'm going to say it's a lot of taxpayer dollars, and we, of course, as a city, incorporated city folks pay towards that county tax, and unfortunately, that committee, which is a city-county committee that also now includes APS, is supposedly the overseer of that money. I question the ability of that kind of a group that's sort of just a voluntary meeting once a month to determine the best use of that behavioral health money. When I was on that board previously, I just rejoined it. There was a big debate about whether it should be an independent board, or is this just something where city and county comes together, and since it's primarily a county tax, they decide what's done with it. That really was what was going on for quite a while. So with regard to behavioral health, that's just operating, those are good funds because they're recurring funds that we can depend upon. They're not a capital thing, or, we're going to build something now and then it's built, but then we don't know how to operate it. Those are operating funds that can be counted upon. So collectively, ourselves in the county and we as city citizens within the county especially need to insist upon the most thoughtful and highest and best use of those precious recurring funds. So that's just with regard to behavioral health. And certainly I completely support the new department. Anxious to see them get off the ground. I know that they're doing good work already. We have other really good partners. And I think Commander Norris and others can attest to this, who really help with public safety, but they don't have anything to do with carrying a nightstick or anything like that. And that's the Albuquerque Street Connect, which is part of Albuquerque Heading Home. That kind of is daily chomping away at the issue is what they do on an individual basis. And they're very helpful to taking the load off of our police department with regard to persons who are homeless or just on the street. And many of which, if you just stick with them for a while, they will accept the roof over their heads. They will accept social services that they, many of them desperately need, and behavioral health services. So I covered one piece of what you asked, Rowan. So
yes.
Correct.
The other piece is the last section, expand violence intervention programs.
Yeah.
Two of them seem to be connected to the city council, as far as I can tell. The fund CABQ violence intervention program. The expansion I don't see as part of the council's role, but the bring restorative justice to schools, particularly as the restorative justice program, Tonya, is now based with the city rather than with APD. So increasing the funds for the violence intervention program here in Albuquerque and restorative justice to schools. Am I right in seeing that as something to be funded by the council? Well,
the council's where the budget buck kind of stops, no intended. But therefore, sure, the funding of anything like that, all of these programs we're talking about, it's important for our citizens to understand the difference between capital money, where you're building something, or you're buying cars, or you're buying a vehicle, or you're buying affordable housing. That's different from the operating budget, and so we need both. What's precious right now is the operating money. There's a lot of federal help. There's going to be ongoing, I think, for a while, as long as the oil and gas is the way it is. Help from the legislature on our capital side, on just building things and buying things that we need. But when it comes to paying for the operations of those things and paying for the salaries of the people who operate out of those places, and those kind of predictable funds for housing, et cetera, that's where we really, we need to work. So this is one area I fully agree that restorative justice, and to the extent that the city needs to pay its fair share of all that, and we need to be looking at that. So, but I want to emphasize that those points with regard to how budgets are for us and how flush we are in terms of potentially in terms of capital, and how short we are in terms of operating.
Interesting. Let me ask you what I asked Mr. Nieto. Both the rebuild behavioral health system and the expand violence intervention programs, just like the rest of this, is a wish list. And just as the individual, Ike Benton, who also happens to be a councillor, if you were to look these two sections over, which would be your two, you would see as the two priorities?
All right, I'm going to plead guilty that I'm not sitting here looking at the list, but I'm impressed by that initiative. I'm impressed by the breadth of it, and I'm impressed by the fact that they really recognize that this is a statewide and community-wide and city county. You know, there are no boundaries when it comes to safety and health and how, you know, the safety, health, and housing, they're all tied together. You know, how can you be healthy? How can you be mentally healthy if you don't have a decent roof over your head? I think there's a lot of folks doing a good job talking about how we proceed, and I think we have a pretty good idea of how we need to proceed. The city, the county, and the university on the behavioral, on the homeless coordinating initiative, and our partners at the state. You know, we're the biggest city in the state. I know that there's a lot of the rest of New Mexico in terms of people, but we're a big part of it, and we need help from the state as well. So,
sometimes they don't love us.
Well, yeah, there's a natural thing in states like New Mexico. There's a natural, I don't know why it is. I think it's like in Indiana and places like that, where there's a large rural segment that sort of is somewhat resentful of the one big city in the center of the state, you know. And a lot of those folks need our services to come to town and get behavioral health services. So, you know, this isn't, we're all in it together. And you know, you're really out of luck if you're way out in a town in remote New Mexico, rural, and you have a behavioral health breakdown or addiction or something. Yeah. Where else are you going to really, you know, most likely you're going to get your best help in the big city. So let's all pull together.
No, I had another question, but it's driven from my head. Oh, when you say county, and this might be beyond your purview, and it's probably a question for Mr. Nieto also. When you say county, you also mean the court system, right? Because there's quite a big section here that would be covered by the courts.
Well, yeah, the courts, you know, district attorney, you know, I mean, we're the system in general. I don't want to just say that entity's responsible, but when I talk about the county, you know, I do often think about our public safety departments, fire and police, of why aren't we more tied together and more joined, and then the same thing on things like housing. We have 2 housing authorities. So I'm not pointing fingers or anything like that. Okay, county should do this, we should do that. We've just got to increase and maximize the coordination and communication.
Okay, one other piece of clarification for Mr. Nieto. What exactly, and this is an ignorant question, so I might feel embarrassed asking it, but I'm going to go for it anyway. What exactly is a diversion?
Oh, the diversion program?
Yeah.
So again, like it ties into violence intervention and trying to divert people away from the path they're going rather than penalizing them, because we see a lot of this where, you know, we catch somebody committing a crime, they go through the judicial system, they get locked up, and then they don't get any sort of services to get themselves out of that life of crime. So they come back out and then they do the same thing again, only maybe worse, so rather than, just keeping that cycle going, trying to divert that person away from that lifestyle. So drug court has been one of the longest running kinds of diversion programs, where as opposed to locking somebody up for minor drug charges, you have them complete a program to either get clean or whatever it is that's impeding their path to Maria Wolf put it in the quote in the chat. Perfect. Divert to treatment. So that would have summed it up a lot easier than my rambling. So divert to treatment.
Okay, super. Thank you. I saw it as a completely different thing, so that's a relief. Is there any other questions? Mr. Anderson has asked about getting onto the peer intervention program. Presumably there's one already in existence here in Albuquerque that he could explore.
There is, and so I'm going to drop my email in the chat. So that way we can get in touch with both ACS and our Family and Community Services Department, because a lot of that peer work is what we're looking to do in the Gateway Center once that's operational, because we know people with lived experience are going to be able to do something that others are not going to be able to do. They can talk the talk because they've walked the walk. So that is wonderful. Please email me and I'll get you in contact with the right people. So there's my email in the chat now.
Super. Thank you. And I have your email also, but if it doesn't make it to people, they can contact me directly and ask. So, Councilor Benton, do you have any other thoughts about this program or initiative? I know that you've seen it.
Yeah.
My first response, I'm afraid, was, oh God, La La Land. So I feel good that
it's extensive. It's extensive. There's no question about it. And then, when you've got that long of a list of where do you start? That's an important part of the discussion. I have to start with making sure our officers are paid competitively. They've got a tough environment out there that they're working in. Albuquerque has a reputation, right or wrong, for a tough place to be an officer. And we know that the working under the consent decree and some of the uncertainties that officers have with regard to what's legal and what's not for them to do to try to maintain order in some cases. I think put yourself in the officer's shoes of being downtown, and there's a person who is clearly just out of their mind, raving on the street, and it's them and some citizen saying, stop that person from doing this, and that's a tough spot to be in. And that's a big city problem. You can go to another big city, you're going to find the same thing downtown. But what I wanted to say was that, we've got to keep our eye on the ball with regard to the council and how much money we spend. There's some critique of the fact that we passed a GRT a few years back dedicated to public safety. Well, should that be repealed? I don't think so. What we need to have is a discussion about exactly, let's keep that in public safety. And in my book, public safety also includes, behavioral health work and housing and so forth. If we do a good job with all those things, the average officer on the street, their job is easier. So, we've got it's all the above, and you're right, Rowan. That's a laundry list. I think it's an accurate laundry list, but it's a huge list of honeydews. And so, how do we prioritize? And that's what happens with us, right? Or when the budget is coming around, if it's the operating budget or even the capital budget, I'm looking at, there's only so much there. Where should we really be putting the money? And we can't just say, well, the cops don't really need anything, their building's falling apart, but we shouldn't fix that. We can go do something else. But we have to make those decisions. Those are the tough decisions in city government. So I've got to run. I really appreciate seeing you all, and I appreciate the CPC and the people who are involved in it. And great to see Commander here. By the way, I wanted to give him a shout out that they've really been trying with regard to the aggressive driving on Central Avenue. And I received recently a report about that they've really been kind of cracking down, and that there's somewhat of a message getting out there amongst the aggressive driver groups. It's not just the individual driver, which is a problem too, but the organized groups of people who are organizing on social media and going out, screwing around and ruining up messing up everyone's peace and quiet and safety. So, but I wanted to give Commander a shout out for that. And I'm going to sign off, but thanks everybody for being involved.
We'll ask you back again. Don't worry.
Right. Happy
like I said, you're our man.
Okay. Take care.
You too. Mr. Nieto, before you have to go, I have a very brief question for you. It says that there are 2 action items here that have been addressed. One is the mobile speed enforcement, and I completely agree. It is being addressed, and it is for the most part being addressed well. But the other one is support security infrastructure for businesses. Now, at the ECHO meeting this morning, there was a case where a business owner got attacked and knocked down by a homeless gentleman, and the police couldn't do anything. They couldn't arrest the person because of a statute, and so because of a state statute, and the businessman was obviously very upset and couldn't completely comprehend. Now, supporting security infrastructure, does that mean that's the goal, to make things safer for business owners?
Yes, and I actually met with some individuals from the West Downtown business group a couple weeks ago, and they asked me the same thing, and they were like, we don't feel supported. So I took that back to my team. We're looking at some other options. I mean, Commander Norris is doing, and his team are doing a great job of trying to be there as much as possible. But, the Valley Area Command covers so much. Like it is a long swath of land from the furthest north end of the city down to, I mean, basically the furthest south end, just right down the middle there. So there's a lot that goes on there. So we're looking at other options of what we can do. I am working with my executive team up here to figure out some more things. That it is one of those difficult things. Like we've talked about how we can connect people's cameras to our real-time crime center, and people have said, that's difficult. So we are looking at other options. I think my best course of action would be to defer to Commander Norris a little bit on this, as he would, I think he would have a better grasp on.
I just was addressing that as an action item that's supposedly already acted on.
Well, you know what, Rowan?
Addressed.
One thing that I'm encouraging my officers to do is, because it is very frustrating for us to respond to a call, understand that a misdemeanor crime has occurred outside of our presence, where we cannot make an arrest on those misdemeanor crimes that occur outside of our presence, except for a group of crimes like, domestic violence, DWI, leaving the scene of an accident, some other things. But, with what's referred to as a battery or an assault, we can't make that arrest. We can establish enough probable cause to write a summons. Therefore, the person is not completely just roaming the streets with impunity. But the one thing that I'm encouraging my officers to do is to start. They need to not look at what they have directly in front of them or what they were called for. If we have an individual who is battering somebody else who's violent, do we have any accompanying crimes that are occurring in front of our face that we can enforce right then and there? For instance, trespassing. Can't arrest you for the battery, but you know what? I'm going to arrest you for trespassing, because if I cut you loose, you're going to come back here and you're going to do the same problem. So not only going to arrest you for trespassing, but I'm also going to summons you for simple battery. So that's what I'm kind of encouraging my officers to do, is look at the entire situation, what they have right in front of them, what they have, what they can enforce and what they cannot enforce, and then use their discretion based off the totality of the circumstances.
They broke a window, apparently, as well. So
yeah, also a misdemeanor crime that occurred outside of our presence.
Oh, so
Yeah.
it's the same deal.
Yeah,
Even
so
though
all
there was a
misdemeanor
witness-
crimes
Yeah.
that occur outside of police presence, we cannot arrest for. If we can establish enough probable cause to say that, yes, that person did in fact break that window, or that person did in fact batter this person, we can issue a criminal summons, but we still cannot make that arrest.
Mhm. Oh, I wasn't
Unless
aware of
the
the
value
criminal
of the
summons.
window is felony. Unless the value of the window is felony.
Right, yes. And the criminal summons, is it kind of an ineffectual gesture? I mean,
Well, I mean, what it does is, like I said, I mean, it sets up a court date. They have they have a bench trial, the officer, and hopefully the victim shows. This is one thing that I've kind of preached to everybody here and also everybody else. The one thing that we need from a lot of our downtown residents and a lot of our downtown business owners is, yes, while we field a lot of complaints and while there are issues there and they are very, very vocal about voicing those issues, the one thing they are not proactive about is prosecuting. And if they are victims of crimes, it takes an entire team to prosecute somebody. So it's going to take more than me just arresting this person and taking that person to jail that day. That's going to generate a court date. That victim's going to have to show up to that court date and participate in that prosecution. That's what a lot of people, I believe, do not understand, that is all community-oriented policing. Is the victim of a crime and the citizens have to be proactive in taking a part and helping out with the prosecution of these individuals. Period. We cannot do it on our own. The law doesn't allow us. So, and that was another thing that I was going to bring up. I talked to my deputy chief about today, about maybe introducing legislation about a lot of the gun crimes that we have. What I mean by that is for as long as I can remember, and when I was commander in SID and even when I was a detective, is one issue that they keep running into is these victims of the shootings don't want to prosecute. Okay. They're not willing to prosecute. And there's several reasons for that. I would say that the vast majority of these victims were partaking in criminal activity when they got shot. So they are either A, worried that whatever crime they were committing is going to be found out and they will be prosecuted, or B, they want to seek retaliation on their own, or C, they don't want to be called or labeled as a rat and then possibly a victim of a homicide later. My contention is this: if we have these victims who are really volunteers, if you think about it, they're dealing drugs, they're putting themselves in a situation where they're getting themselves shot. Okay, they are contributing to their demise in getting shot. Okay, if they don't want to prosecute, that's their prerogative. My contention is this: what do we have on the books that is preventing the state from taking that case and prosecuting it on their own, like a narcotics case, like sometimes a domestic violence case? Because what happens is you have somebody who shoots another person, the shooter gets to roam the streets with impunity. So he thinks it's okay and he can do it to anybody because nobody's going to prosecute him. Well, if the state is proactive about that and prosecutes them, that may help with some of our gun violence.
But the businessmen generally, the business owners that are being impacted, particularly in the Valley area and presumably in the Southeast also, because face it, we're the two highest crime areas.
That's not true.
Oh, it's not? Who is?
Northeast and Southeast have the highest crime. Valley is.
No, I said Southeast. I didn't realize
but you
Northeast.
You said Southeast and Valley. Don't you punk me out that way.
Well, that's since you got here, Commander Norris, things have changed. There's a new sheriff in town. I apologize. But,
I'm messing with you.
But businesses that are impacted by people that are homeless, I don't I could be wrong, but I don't think that they're hesitating to prosecute. I think they're feeling they are.
We're not getting the cooperation with court dates with a lot of with business owners. Oh, I don't have time to go to my court date.
Okay. Well, I see that the third highest. Yes, the gentleman has said the Valley is the third highest. We did used to be the second highest, and that really wasn't that long ago. Well, if you put downtown in the Valley area, it's like it's like a little island in the Valley Command.
Yeah, down, like I've always said, the Valley Area Command is unique, and it's almost like there's two area commands in one. There's the downtown area, and then there's the rest of the valleys.
So I'm pretty certain that the Valley is the third highest. But in terms of needle exchange, of business people being harassed by people that are homeless in one way or another, trespassing or anything else, in terms of speeding is different places, except in the downtown area, there's a unique and particular traffic problem there. Then the downtown is probably the worst thing. Actually, quite a while ago, a question came up that you might be able to answer, Commander Norris. Let me have a look. It was about police accreditation, certification. That Miss Dickinson, I hope you don't mind me using your name, read that police certification is not being checked in New Mexico. And what is the status of APD certifications?
I have no idea what that question means.
If you could elaborate,
yeah,
I guess.
I don't understand the question. Certifications, are we talking about law enforcement certifications being checked?
So.
I can tell you that that there is a law enforcement certification board, I want to say, and if you have a specific amount of discipline, that is supposed to go up to the LEA board to see if your law enforcement certification can be revoked. But that is taken care of in Santa Fe. And that's something that I really can't speak intelligently to as to whether it's being done or not. That's something that somebody up at the LEA board would probably be able to answer more intelligently.
Once it's revoked, you can't be a policeman anymore?
That's correct. Not in this state.
Okay. So I hope that answers your question. Let us know if it doesn't. Woo. So I think with quite a bit of time to go, Commander Norris, if you would like to go over your area command strategic plan.
Sure. Just by a show of hands, who's read it? You guys aren't helping me out at all.
I skimmed it, kind of read it. Did anybody else? But
okay,
it's only, is it like 100 pages? It only seemed like a couple.
No, it's not 100 pages, but what I want to avoid doing is reading it to you guys. I can do that and I can go over it, absolutely. But what I ideally, like I said, what I think would be great is if everybody kind of read it, jotted down some questions, had ideas for omissions or additions, and then came to me at the next meeting and say, hey, let's talk about this. I got a question about this. Let's add this. Let's omit this. That's ideally what I would like to do, but I will do whatever the members want me to do right now.
I think it's an excellent idea. Commander. And Rowan or Commander Norris, could you send it around to us and by email with a flag on it?
With a flag on it? Sure.
Sure. So I don't, sort of meaninglessly. And
I don't know how to flag an email, but I'll do my best. Show me how to flag and then I'll do it. Or I'll put that it's highest priority.
Just a nasty note reminding me that I hadn't done it when I was supposed to do it.
Well, we talked about it at our last meeting, not our last meeting with Commander Norris. We talked about it at our last meeting as a council, and it came up, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm sorry, I have it. I will send it out," and I did send it out the next day. So we will. I think you're right, Commander Norris. We will. Does that sound okay to everybody that we hold off till next month so that we're more prepared? And I can also send it out to the mailing list. So if they have any questions or concerns, we can invite their comments and observations too.
Right. One thing about the strategic plan is that it's something that is kind of going up. It's something that we're presenting to you. It's part of paragraph 260. And it's something that the monitors wanted us to present to you and get CPC's specific input. So that's why I wanted you guys to be relatively familiar with the document. That way I can answer any questions. And like I said, you guys since I've been here since July, in every meeting that I've been with this, with these members, you guys come up with some really, really good ideas. And what's to say that we cannot implement those things into the strategic plan relative to the resources we have, relative to practicality, relative to, if it's something that falls under a law enforcement purview. So I really want to hear your thoughts. So that's why it's that's why it's important to me. And plus I want to post this on our area command website, but I don't want to post a draft. I want to post the final draft on the website. And if I don't have your guys' approval, it's not final. Make sense? Sound fair? Sound reasonable?
Are you okay with getting comments and questions and concerns from the participants of the meeting also, the attendees?
Yes, I can get those. I will say, like I said, this is what we're looking at the CPC members as is a broad and diverse reflection of our community. The discussion, but by all means, those types of things, I'll be more than willing to read those and be receptive to those.
Well, I can send it out to the mailing list and ask them if they have any questions or concerns to contact me, and then I will incorporate that, or we will incorporate that in our comments. Does it seem to you like it's worth a whole meeting to go over this? Because if you need a whole meeting, we can.
I don't think we need a whole meeting. No, you know what? Honestly, I don't think we need a whole meeting. But I believe in my last meetings with the monitors, it is a requirement of ours to present it to you, get your input. So it is going to take some time at the next meeting, but I don't think it's going to take a full 2 hours.
Okay, that'll work. I'll factor that in. That means that tonight's meeting is going to be pretty short. I've said that before, though.
I have a question. Does your mailing list include the neighborhood associations and Commander Norris? Can I send this to my neighborhood association?
I have Wells Park on. I have Wells Park on the list.
Okay, all right. Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
No, I have all the neighborhood associations, and I email out to them also.
Okay, all right.
And I know I have Wells Park because it reads Wells Park, so I always notice that. I just wanted to say we might well have a shorter meeting tonight, but I've said that before, and we go till 8 o'clock. So
I like Commander Norris's idea about us thoroughly reading it and being prepared. I appreciate that, and apologize I didn't have time to do that. But
I agree. Commander Norris, I was really interested in your comment about gun violence and your ideas about the effort to prosecute gun violence, even when the victim isn't a willing witness or willing to cooperate with the police investigation. But I'm wondering, how do you overcome that? I mean, the DA to prosecute is going to need a witness, and
Right.
and the guy's unwilling or gone to ground.
Sure. So oftentimes, and therein lies kind of, that's the big question. I mean, it's it's not as simple as it sounds, the state taking over the case and prosecuting on their own. But here's the thing: we prosecute people all the time for homicides where there's no witnesses. The victim can't talk. The victim's dead, right? So it's really based off of physical evidence. It's based off of the type of investigation the detective does, and that's where we can really bring a case together. Where through those types of things, those things sometimes may be few and far between, but I think that it's incumbent upon the state, because we talked about it earlier, this isn't just an Albuquerque problem, it's a statewide problem, right? So it's incumbent upon the state to step in and say, you know what, no, we're going to do what we can to step in and take over this case and make the state a victim, because the state is a victim. The state is a victim of rampant violent crime, period. And while it is very difficult to prosecute somebody without an eyewitness, while it's very difficult to prosecute somebody where the victim is not wanting to cooperate, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. So I think the question is how bad do you want to get crime down in the state? How bad? You're going to have to do the hard stuff. And I know this is coming from just some cop with a bachelor's degree and no law degree. And I understand there's a lot of intricacies within prosecution, but I do not believe it is outside the realm of possibility.
Well, I'm thinking that if you're able to identify the person who is the
shooter,
maybe why you can't get an investigation going on the assault itself. You might be able to get an investigation going on just a simple possession of a firearm crime. And I know, and
I mean, just anything. Exactly. And that's the thing is, you stack charges and you look at the crimes that you do have and the crimes that you can prove without beyond a shadow of a doubt that person committed, right? That's the burden of proof. And I just think it's an option that needs to be explored. And because like I said, it's just, you have people running around the state, running around the city with impunity, that are able to do these things, and it empowers them and it entitles them. And the state has to take some responsibility in that entitlement.
There's no question about that. I mean, I firmly believe that the greatest deterrent to crime is the fear of getting caught. And if there's no fear of getting caught, there's no deterrent.
Nope.
And even if you don't get caught for the thing you do, if you get caught for something sufficiently serious, that'll do the job, or at least it'll start the job.
When I was a gang detective, and we would, just even police officers, a field officer, that was one thing that I always kind of knew when I was dealing with somebody who had a lengthy criminal history and was just a career criminal. It's, I may not be catching you for this crime, or I may be catching you for the crime that I'm seeing, but I'm also looking at it and trying to put together as good of cases I can, because I know there's a bunch of other crimes you committed that I didn't catch you for, that you need to be punished for accordingly.
No, I agree. Well, good luck. I can't offer you any more advice than that, although, there's always the possibility of a search warrant, and based on the fact that the guy had a gun at all, and if you got a record, it's a felony, and you could search his house or his car.
The great thing about today's society, the gift and the curse of today's society is there's cameras everywhere.
Yeah,
we will see you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good. I mean, that's a question for another day. But I always thought that one of if you really wanted to deter crime, you could do a number of things. And of the top 5 of my list is security cameras. London has them all over, and England is a much different situation than the United States. But apparently there are remarkable deterrent. But if you put cameras everywhere, you entail some costs, some societal costs. And it depends on what you want to do, how you want to balance that.
There's a price.
CCTV in London has made all the difference, seriously. During the July 7th bombing, they were able to catch all the perpetrators through CCTV. And there's either 1 or 2 cameras pretty much on every street, which for London is hard to imagine. So for them, it's more of a gift than a curse. But London is an enormous city, one of the largest cities in the world. And so they need that kind of control. But it's very interesting.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get off on a tangent.
Oh, I got you off on a tangent. I'm sorry. I was just praising my former home, and it's in all its battered glory. Just a habit when it comes up.
I have a question for Commander. What does the state have that they can prosecute these crimes that APD and the local prosecution can't do? Is it a manpower, person power thing, or money, or what?
Well, there's a lot of answers to the question. I mean, obviously we have to work as a team to prosecute. Officers we can't have an officer prosecution on an aggravated battery on any felony crime, right? There needs to be, just any intervention on that because of the complexities of the case and things like that. So I think it is. I think it's a manpower issue. And I'll be perfectly honest with you. I also think it's an experience issue with some of your first line trial lawyers or your lawyers who are not yet trial lawyers. And I think that, the supply and the demand is way off. There's a big supply of it. And there's a big supply of cases. And there's a high demand, but we don't have the manpower to. I think the DA doesn't have the manpower to keep up with a caseload like. I think that's the biggest thing.
That refer to the revolving door.
Yeah.
I'm so tired of that phrase, but I understand the logic of it. I mean, one of the most disturbing things right now is a 7-year-old child was run over on Central, and the person apparently the person who did it is known. You just can't get him, and that's very, very disturbing. Oh, okay. Kelly wrote a really long thing. So I don't know if that relates, but it seems to be emblematic of the problems in Albuquerque, the problems that you were talking about kind of come under it in a way that you can't arrest people or find people if the victims don't go ahead and prosecute. But this is a much more serious case. And it would be disturbing in any city. It'd be disturbing in any large city, anywhere. It's just very disturbing that this person hasn't been brought to justice.
Yep.
But that's all. That's more of an observation than it is an observation, totally an observation. But the victim, I'm wondering. I'm trying to see in this crime initiative. I don't see anything about victim support. Should we work on having that added? Should we talk to Mr. Nieto, contact the mayor about adequate victim support?
Well, I know that for the police department, our advocates, you know, that it's something that we're always doing is victim support. You know what I mean? I think it kind of, it's intrinsic in one of those 41 categories that we do. You know what I mean? So I think it kind of goes in there. But anyway.
No, I was just interested because I don't see it specifically listed in these initiatives. So that was I was simply interested in seeing if it could be added.
Sure.
If there's anything else that comes under this, Commander Norris, that was a really interesting discussion. Thank you so much, your observations and everything. And congratulations on the valley no longer being.
Sure.
Now we're going down. We're getting.
Hey, man, it went from 2 to 3. It's not a coincidence that it was at 2, and now that I'm here, it's at 3. It's not a coincidence. I'm just saying.
You the man. So, I guess here we go. Oh yeah, I have a question about the dashboard to track criminal cases. How far is that along? Is it? I remember Commander Brown showing us a dashboard for tracking criminal cases.
I have it. Yeah, I can try to share it with you guys. I think I don't know how to share. I don't know how to share anything.
But they're saying fund it and it's one of the things that's gone up to the legislation. So is it underfunded?
Dashboard? You know what? I'm sorry. When I hear dashboard, I think it's something completely different. So I'm not familiar with what you're talking about.
Well, they're talking about funding a dashboard to track criminal cases. So
that would be, I think, a DA thing, but I don't know. I don't have any information on that.
Well, it's under the fight crime section, which I thought largely pertained to police. Now, you've seen this list, right? You know the 40 points. You've seen them. So if
I have them memorized.
You don't have them memorized. Well, we didn't read the.
I have them memorized.
You have them memorized?
No, not at all.
Well, if you have them memorized, we read the area command initiative.
By the time we read the strategic plan, Commander Norris, we want you to have memorized all 40 of them.
Damn it.
Okay.
Yes, that's only fair. But I just want to say it's another wish list, and without going into details of what they are, because you don't have them in front of you, what would be the most important thing for the police to have to fight crime? Let's see if I can tell you if it's here or not, or if it would be. One thing it has is hire more officers, create retention programs for officers, and expand crime fighting technology.
You know, I would say honestly, yes, obviously more officers are great, but I would even go a different direction and not necessarily something that's tangible. You know, as far as, you know, equipment or retention money, which is tangible. I would honestly say successful prosecution of offenders. That would retain officers. That would help officers, because officers that would help officers, because officers get sick and tired of arresting the same people over and over and over again when this officer is witness to that heinous crime, and they're seeing this person come out and be out, you know, not long after they've committed that crime, or it gets nulled because, you know, a tow-in sheet wasn't part of the packet. You know what I mean? So yes, more officers would help officers, but honestly, the successful prosecution would help retain our officers and help us, because, you know, everybody, it's the human condition to do something and maybe see a reward out of it, right? It's positive reinforcement. You do all of this work and you don't get anything out of it, and you get hope. You just kind of get hopeless. You're like, well, then what's the point? But I will say this, you know, we also have to do a better job of putting strong cases together being diligent in our investigations, dotting our I's, crossing our T's, and really leaving no stone unturned when it comes to these investigations. So, you know, I think that more officers and training when it comes to stuff like that would be really helpful. We have to own some of that too. We have to. It's not me pointing the finger at anybody. We're a big piece of that puzzle when it comes to that successful prosecution.
I know that most people that I've spoken to, and even candidates for certain office positions for certain government positions, have always seemed to blame the courts and only the courts. So it's kind of refreshing to hear that point of view from you.
Yeah, it's not. I'm not into blaming just the courts. It's everybody needs to take ownership with this. Everybody, and like I said, it goes back to me saying about how we don't have victims that are willing to prosecute even for low-level crimes. Well, you know what? If you're not helping, then you're contributing to it. That's the way that I look at it. You know, it's your civic duty to help prosecute somebody who committed a crime against you. That's the way that I look at it. And okay. You're not helping when you're not willing to do that.
Okay.
I'm wondering, Commander Norris, if some of that is inexperience of the investigating officers, if it is. So how can that be ramped up? Is that oversight by you, or?
It's oversight by me. It's oversight by first line supervisors. I mean, I talked to my first line supervisors, my lieutenants, saying, listen, when you guys read these reports, I'm pulling reports. I have all my officers send me all felony arrest reports. And I'll read all of them, and I'm like, well, why did you search this guy? You don't say why you searched this guy in the report. You know what I mean? The search could have been legal, but I wouldn't know because you didn't write it down. You know what I mean? And that needs to be caught at a first line level, but it starts at the infancy in your law enforcement career. And it's a really, really hard to squeeze a lot of that type of material into a six month academy with everything else that they have to learn and certify through the state and skill. So some of it is trial and error, and it's a slippery slope when you're talking about prosecution, but some of it is trial and error. I mean, I've read criminal complaints that I wrote when I was a rookie, and I've been just embarrassed, like, oh my God, what? You know, and then I read criminal complaints 3 years subsequent to that one I read, and I'm like, oh geez, that's a lot better. You know, it's just, you learn too, you know, you learn. But more training, more legal training can always help, you know, but some of it just comes with experience.
Should we try and recommend that as a CPC? There be more training?
Well, here's the problem. Yeah, but here's what makes that difficult, Rowan, is the laws and changes to case law are so fluid. It's really hard to keep up. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And it would be constant with you know, the inordinate amount of training hours that we have to put in anyway. It would be just a very, very constant. It would be hard to accomplish.
Well, I know as a teacher, as a special education teacher, I had to write an individual education plan every year for every student I had, and that was a moving feast. That changed a lot, and because it was law, once it was written down, it was the law that this particular student got the services that were recommended and stated in the IEP. And so I'm sorry, but if we had to do that on top of all the other training, then it can be done. And if it's something that you find a problem, then it should be solved.
No, you're absolutely right. It's just the logistics. It's just the logistics of having to work that out. You know what I mean? And get it accomplished, because we're having a hard time enough keeping our head above water with a span of coverage for the city with all the training that we have to go through already. You know what I mean? I mean, because all that training, while it, yes, in the long run, it does help, it doesn't help you who's waiting for an officer to respond to your call, because we just don't have them right now.
Oh, you have no idea how much training teachers have to do. No idea.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Professionally developed left and right. But one of the roles of the CPC, and it's specifically in the CASA, and it came up during our Council of Chairs meetings, is that police seek advice from us. So I would really like to have a list of all the trainings that police have to do. Police that are out of the academy, that are out in the streets, that are, you know, what kind of training,
right?
And how long is it? Yeah, the mandatory trainings.
But
I'd like to know what they are. No, you don't have to tell me right now, but if you could send me a list.
Yeah. Yeah, just send me an email and
I will
get with the academy. I mean, it's voluminous.
But once they get out of the academy, I mean, I was through my teacher training. I was graduated. I had my master's, and I still had to be. I'm sorry. I'm going to get off my little ego trip pretty soon, but there's a parallel. I mean, I had to be trained and trained and trained and trained, even though I was out of school, and I was theoretically done. So I asked Sean about this, and Sean seemed to. It seemed pretty meager, the training, once they were out of the academy. And that's what I'm asking about, the training after the academy, the training and writing reports, not during the time in academy, but after.
Yeah, that's very minimal.
So that's when we would come in and make the recommendation.
Okay.
And it wouldn't have to necessarily be an in-person thing. It could be an online, it could be, I don't know how else to describe it, but I think it's important that police continue to be trained and developed even after they're out of the academy. But now we have reached the magic hour of only 37 minutes left at 7:23, 37. Said my math, that's rather appalling. Thank you, Tom. So we should go into any questions and concerns people have. Oh, Karen, really quickly, there was somebody who asked about, actually this pertains, that she saw a down and out person passed out on the sidewalk, and she saw someone going through that person's backpack trying to steal something of value. And she felt hopeless, and it ruined the rest of her day. If she'd called 242 cops, she didn't think it would have made any difference. Would it have done anything?
Well, I mean, it would have generated a call for service, but as far as you know, an emergency, I mean, somebody getting hurt or something like that, it wouldn't necessarily constitute a 911 call. It would generate a call for service, but you know, I can't speak to when the response time on a call like that. So it's hard for me to answer that question. And it's really hard for me to answer that question. I mean, I would never discourage anybody from calling us and reporting something. But you know, that also is a crime that's occurring right then and there. By the time it gets 242 cops, and then it gets to 911, and then it gets dispatched to us, it's you know, the likelihood of maybe catching something like that would be really difficult. It'd be really low. But I'd never discourage anybody from calling us on something like that.
But it also adds to the statistics, does it not? If it's an ongoing problem, I mean, aren't the the call center's calls are collated and data comes out of them to you know, if there's car thefts and it's a particular car, a particular model that's being sold more than any other. But if there's homeless people experiencing homelessness, lying in the street and getting robbed, it happens once, then yeah, but if it happens 10 or 11 or 12 or God forbid 50 times, then it becomes an area of concern. One of our roles as a CPC is to pinpoint things that might not have anything to do with APD, or there might not be a solution for, but to highlight them and see if somewhere down the road that it becomes a greater problem that the police have to address.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very important role of ours. So that's all I have to say. I'm wondering if anybody, how much training is required for field service?
Well, so our cadets go through a 6-month academy. And then after that 6-month academy, they go through a 4-month on-the-job training process. And they have to graduate from each phase of on-the-job training to actually be out on their own. And then they're on probation for the first year after they graduate, and then they change rank from a patrolman 2nd class to a patrolman 1st class. So from the time you get into the academy to the time that you get out on your own, it's about 10 months of training.
Okay, thank you. Does that, Mr. Jameson, I hope that answers your question.
Some cadets even have longer because you may get extended on a certain phase of training.
Oh, because they flunked, or because they have to
do it again? They didn't meet all the benchmarks that they were supposed to meet relative to the phase that they were in, so they could get extended. And you know, then the decision has to be made whether or not this person is capable of being a police officer relative to how they're performing out in the field.
Well, they have that drive along, don't they? Which is what, about 4 months? Oh,
well, that's the on-the-job process. That's field training officer.
Mr. Jameson has
expanded
on his.
Right, I'm reading them too. I have them right here. That's okay.
Yeah.
So the additional training, we have maintenance of effort training pretty much every 6 months, which is basically, you know, updates that we need to get, legal updates, whether it be to domestic violence, whether it be other updates relative to policy. And then also it kind of really depends on where we are at within our training suite for, say, I'll give use of force, for example. So, you know, we just recently finished our tier 4 use of force training, which basically all officers have gone through all their training with regard to use of force. So there's that kind of continued training with regard to requirements from the settlement agreement, requirements to maintain our law enforcement certification. But then there's also voluntary training that you can go to with things that you may be interested in. We have a detectives academy who people would, if they want to be a detective one day, they have to go through that. We have, you know, basic instructor courses. We have firearms instructor courses. We have, we also have, you know, certain firearms classes that individuals can attend. We have CIT courses, ECIT courses. There's a lot of training that is available to officers. When I say available, become available, but they have a lot of options to get various certifications within their training. So there's a lot of additional training to be given. It just kind of depends on what type of training that you want. And then there's mandatory training that we have to go to that, like I said, are requirements of the state, requirements of the settlement agreement.
Well, there's the CIT training is mandatory, isn't it?
Yeah. When you graduate the academy, you should be CIT certified. So the ECIT the enhanced that's a little bit different. Yeah.
Yes. That extra $35 a month. At least that's what Sean told me.
Is most of that training done in state?
Yeah. Well, there are out-of-state trainings that we can apply for, with certain vendors, but we have to be very careful with that, depending on the training, because we don't want to, we're in a unique situation with the settlement agreement, and we don't want to be attending training that is training officers to act outside of policy and outside of the settlement agreement. Does that make sense? So use of force training, other types of training that are really specific to the settlement agreement. We don't send officers, very rarely do we send officers to training like that out of state. We have to be very, very choosy on the vendors of this stuff. And really, it's got to be approved through the training academy.
I'm happy to hear that, because I've read about vendors outside of the state that are questionable. So I'm glad to hear that. The other thing I was wondering is there some type of mentorship for, let's say I'm writing reports or investigating and writing, and I'm missing things. Is there some kind of mentoring that happens for fairly new, maybe someone's been in 2-3 years and they have that kind of deficit, where you can assign someone who has those skills to help another officer?
The mentoring should be coming from their first line supervisor, from their sergeant, because their sergeant is reading every report and should be watching videos of them, should be in tune to what their officers are doing. Now, so their sergeant should be one of their coaches, their mentors. However, if you have a good sergeant and you have a squad full of individuals, and you have an individual who has a strength where this person's weakness lies, a good sergeant would have that senior officer help mentor that junior officer as well.
Does that happen?
Yes, it does.
Oh. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
So I know that Laura's going to give us a report, but if you could address what kind of prevalent crime you're seeing, and you, Commander Norris, what kind of prevalent crime you're seeing in the Valley area, and what areas we need to are getting more crime than others. And
sure, I'm pulling mine up right now. Laura, if you want to talk about the property crimes, and then I'm just waiting for Peregrine to pull up on mine.
Sure. I'm sorry, my video is not working tonight. The Valley property crimes from 12/25/2021 to 1/25/2022. There were 45 commercial burglaries, 17 residential burglaries, 23 vehicle burglaries, 76 auto thefts, 42 recovered vehicles, 12 commercial robberies, and 4 robberies by gunpoint. Does anybody have any questions on that?
are the commercial properties stats higher than usual? They sound it.
We've been getting hammered. I don't know. I've yet to with everything that I've kind of been doing, I haven't found. It's really difficult for me to find the reason why there's such a big spike in commercial burglaries. We're finding a lot of our commercial burglaries up north. And when I speak up north, I'm talking about like north of Osuna, kind of in that area, kind of where I don't want to say industrial, but where you have a lot of those businesses. But so we've taken efforts to put video trailers out there. And then also making sure, because a lot of these are occurring, in the graveyard hours. So when we're not focusing, if it's on the weekend, if we're not focusing on the downtown closing, then we're trying to send our officers up there to make sure that they're diligent and just kind of randomly patrolling that. But yeah, we've had a spike in that. Auto thefts are up citywide. We've been recovering a lot of them. I've been getting hammered around that between the 800 and 1,000 block of silver. So we're taking measures that I'll kind of keep under my hat for right now, but just understand I'm fighting for you guys. We're taking measures to combat that. So we're doing everything we can with those. One thing that we've done, we've seen a lot of success with, and I'm going to actually have my crime analyst do a comparison. So starting on I believe the 13th of January, I'm getting the date for you guys now. On the 9th of January, we've been running a traffic tac plan on Central every Sunday between 7 at night and 11 at night to address the speeding, the street racing, and the modified exhaust. So the first week we had state police help us out. They weren't out there last week, but it's been the Valley Area Command, the Southwest Area Command, traffic. And we've had some people who have volunteered for overtime that have come in and we've written approximately 200 sites on the past 2 Sundays, gotten some arrests out of it, gotten some DWI arrests, some felony arrests, and we're continuing that this Sunday. So what I'm going to have my crime analysts do is actually do a comparison for the 3 weeks prior to us doing this operation in terms of seeing what the calls for service were like, and then the 3 weeks during this operation and seeing what type of impact it's had as far as knocking down calls for service on Sundays. Because from what my lieutenant's telling me is that every Sunday that we've been out there, it's been super dead in terms of calls for service, which is a really good thing. And I think it's good on several levels. Number one, I pulled 2 swing shift officers from a squad to go and do this op plan with us for 4 hours, and I think it helps them. It gets them out of the redundancy from just going from call to call to call, and it kind of reignites their fire on why they became a police officer, is to go out and do proactive work and do those things. So I think it's a good thing, and it's almost, we're not really losing anything if we pull those 2 officers out of that squad doing these things, if it's going to be cutting down on calls for service. Does that make sense? So we're real happy with that.
We don't call for service when we can't cross Central because of the cars clogging up.
I'm sorry?
When we can't cross the street because of the cars coming, and we don't call for service when one time I parked on Central to go work at the chemo theatre, and I'd completely forgotten I'd done that. And so it was a Sunday, and so when I came to try and pull my car out, I was there for a very long time. And then we don't call for service.
Yeah,
the intersection happens. These are inconveniences, but we don't call for service. So
right. But we get all kinds of calls for service for the racing, for the modified exhaust, and for everything else that kind of comes along with the cruising. Now, it's not illegal in and of itself to cruise, right? But it's everything that comes along with it that these individuals are kind of doing that is breaking the law. So one thing that we do on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays is I'm actually having Central shut down a little bit earlier than normal. So there isn't that block, that jam of traffic between second and 8th. So that should also help things.
That's good to know. Is there anything else you're going to bring up? Some other crime stats? Have you been able to bring them up? Or
let me check right now. My Peregrine wasn't working great. Here we go. Hold on. I have to put in a little code here that I get via text.
Rowan, while he's looking at that, I just wanted to remind everybody, because there is a spike in the commercial burglaries. We're still doing the CEPTEDs, which are security surveys where we go out to the businesses or residences and we look for vulnerabilities. It is a free service. So if you want that done at your residence or business, please get a hold of me and I'd be more than happy to do that for you.
Okay. Are the businesses responsive to that? Do you think they proact and after you've been there, they make the changes? And are they big changes that you end up recommending?
Some of them do all of the changes we recommend. Some don't do any. It just depends on their budget. Some are really cheap fixes. Some can be very expensive. It just depends on the owner of what they want to implement in their business. But I've noticed since the spike in COVID, I've been getting less requests right now, but I just want to throw out there that I am still doing that. So feel free to contact me and I'll put my information in the chat.
I'll put it out on Nextdoor too. If you want to send me a paragraph, I'll paste it into Nextdoor.
Okay, great. I'll do that for you.
Thank you for reminding us of that.
Actually, I don't really have. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
Thank you.
No, I'm happy she reminded us of that. I'd actually forgotten, and it's good information to pass on.
You're welcome.
I'd actually, with regard to what the things that Laura shared in terms of the numbers, I just pulled up paragraph. I think that's maybe where she pulled it from. I don't have anything additional to add to that. Like I said, our hot spots for some of our burglaries and some of our auto thefts, I shared that with you guys. You know, and just we're doing everything that we can to get out in front of those and address those. So, but like I said, we are seeing a spike in auto thefts. We've been seeing that actually since for a couple months now citywide. So I know we're really cracking down on those things.
And murders, have we had any in the valley given this current rush of murders? Have there been?
No, there was a and I can't give too much information about it right now. But we did have something occur the other night where the initial indication is that there may have been a drive-by shooting at 4th and San Clemente. We don't know what the motive is. We don't know what's going on. That person has since deceased. But there's some things kind of going on that we've found out. When I say we as a department, our homicide guys, and which information that I am privy to, that is, there's some good leads on that one. There's some good leads on that one. So.
And assaults? Have there been many assaults in the?
The assaults. Let me see here. We have for ag assault and battery for the past 30 days. There's been 44. So, and that's kind of spanning. We'll see, you know, issues with that downtown bar closing, with fights. You know, sometimes we have an individual experiencing homelessness and also behavioral health issues or mental health issues, them possibly battering somebody or assaulting somebody, because there's a difference between an assault and there's battery. What?
You broke up.
Oh, there's a difference between an assault and a battery.
Yeah.
So, but we will see some of that going on, just kind of really everywhere. But mostly we'll see it mostly downtown with a lot of the activity that happens downtown, and at some of the parks where you have a lot of individuals who are unsheltered that are living together, that, you know, get in conflicts and they start assaulting and or battering each other.
Dick, did you have something to add? You seem to be about to speak, so I'm just checking if you had something to add.
No, not at all.
Okay. Tom.
I would like to ask Laura, in our October meeting with the crime report, we asked for some comparison information, like year to date and then last year to date, so we can see whatever trends are occurring. Because just looking at the numbers for the month, is that better than this time last year or worse? Or can we have that information on Laura's report?
You know what, Tom, what I can do for you is I'm actually in Duke City Stats, what we refer to as Duke City Stats next week. And it has a lot of those comparisons, those comparison slides. So what I can do is get those comparison slides. We can do the year or the month relative to kind of what we've seen from December to January, and I can present that in February or show that to you guys or send that to you guys. And then you guys can ask questions about that. In fact, let me make a note to myself, but if you would send me an email, that would be really helpful.
I was answering a question for somebody. Somebody sent me a question, Karen. I don't know if you're still here, about domestic abuse, and I was looking it up, and I found just through Google, I just put Albuquerque crime stats and got this whole page with comparisons, 2021 and the beginning of 22 of crimes. So that's there, and it's useful to look at. It's pretty quick and dirty, but it's there. Just put Albuquerque crime stats in Google and it comes right up. Is there anything else?
Nothing for me.
Come on, Norris.
I wanted to ask Commander Norris about Coronado Park. I noticed that it's been somewhat cleaned up. Is the city assisting APD, or do you have officers that monitor the park for drug use and other crimes?
That's a multi-department effort within the city. So we just did a mass cleaning on Wednesday, and officers aren't really there. Obviously, that's not our job. We don't clean the park, but what we do is we provide the security element for the individuals who are trying to maintain the park, including the park, like Parks and Rec, like solid waste. ACS is also out there offering resources days prior to. So, Coronado Park, for lack of a better term, it's a monster. And I know that the city is doing absolutely everything that they can to try and figure out the best for that. But, we just, our officers are out there pretty much on a daily basis, proactively. They're also responding to calls out there. But, the cleanup and the maintenance of that park is, like I said, we have environmental health out there. We have solid waste, us, AFR, Metro Security, Parks and Rec. I mean, there are so many people that are trying to, make sure, just maintain that park. So, I think a lot of us are really, really crossing our fingers for the Gateway Center. But we're still finding crimes that are occurring in the park, and my officers are still enforcing those crimes as they should be, whether it be encampments, whether it be violent crimes, whether it be narcotic-related crimes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have another question. Can businesses link their video cameras to the real-time crime center?
There is that option, but what you would have to do is you'd actually have to get contact Don Lewis with our real-time crime center. But we have some partnerships with businesses around the city where we can pretty much link in with their cameras. That would probably be a better question answered by the experts, which I am not. But I can put in his email address in the chat if you want me to ask him that question, and then he can kind of provide that info to you. Do you want that email address?
Yes, please.
Okay, give me a second. I'm going to Pull it up.
Edwina, I also have a flyer explaining about the camera hookups if you want me to email that to you.
Oh, yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Dawn actually, you know what, Laura, let's start there. And Edwina, if you have any other questions about it, then I can get you to Dawn, but I don't want to be redundant or duplicate an effort. And I think Dawn will probably send you the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
We have about 9 minutes. Does anybody who's still out there attending this meeting have any questions or concerns that they'd like to bring up in 9 minutes? Feel free. These meetings are, then let me just say that these meetings are for the community. They are for all of you, and we want to have our subject matter be as topical as possible. We want to invite best possible people who are expert in the topic that we've chosen to have discussed. We would like input from anybody about what topics you would like to see discussed, and maybe even who you would like to see. And please spread the word about these meetings. And if you have any, we'll be devoting some of the time in February to Commander Norris's plan, and we will have done our homework. And
Do your homework. You should know better. You're a teacher.
Ex-teacher, retired teacher.
Once a teacher, always a teacher.
Touche, touche.
But I can
don't feel so
email
bad if the teacher doesn't do her homework. I can't be expected to.
It's been so long. It's been so long ago. But I can send out the link to the Mayor's Initiative Plan. I did send it out listed. It wasn't all fancy like that. I just pulled it up and listed it, but I can certainly send the link. And as well as that, I will send the plan out to the mailing list. And if you just contact me directly and say of any points or any suggestions you have, I can incorporate those into ours. So that, oh, wait a minute, there's a couple of new messages. Oh, thank you, Commander Norris. Your input was engagement made for a very useful session. Commander Norris, my pleasure. Actually, Commander Norris, it was amazing tonight. Not that you're not amazing at every meeting, don't get me wrong.
Thank you.
It was an incredibly useful and very informative piece. And along with the crime initiative, I feel like tonight was a really strong meeting. And if any of you that attended feel the same way, please come back. Please give us input about what we should have in our meetings. Please consider joining our council. It's quite an easy thing to do. If Uncle Kelly posts the link that will get you to our page, then that would be very useful. Do you have it to hand, Kelly, the link? So if you could post it on the chat. Actually, another way to do it is I do it all the time. I just Google CPC Albuquerque and that gets me straight to the page. And there's all kinds of information there. There's the agendas, there's the minutes, there's the link for getting to the meetings. And also there's a way to have a statement, put in a statement of interest about being a council member. And we do have somebody with us tonight who's submitted a statement of interest, and we hope that we do get more people. We are 5 right now, and we can be 12. Kelly, 12?
11.
Oh, 11. So it would be nice to work on that. We get people, we get great people, and then they get jobs. They're too busy. They don't leave because they don't like us. They just get very busy, have other things going on in their lives.
And
So,
Rowan, unless I misunderstood you, it is our great liaison, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Kelly is our great liaison.
Yes.
Is our great liaison, yes. Kelly is a great liaison. Fancy word.
As far as liaisons go, I guess I'm decent.
I never remember how to spell it. I think I've got it down now. So thank you, everybody. There's 5 more minutes. Yes.
I just wanted to say, Commander Norris, I saw for the first time on Central police on motorcycle having the radar gun.
Yep.
And I had to ask him if it was okay for me to jaywalk at my favorite jaywalking spot. And, you know, if there's no traffic, is it okay for me to cross here? And he said, got to go by the book. Got to go to the traffic.
Attaboy. Attaboy.
He said, I'm going to tell you what the law is. So, but it was good to see him out there. I had not seen anyone. Oh, it was Central and Rio Grande area. So it might be part of your initiative, but he said he works.
Yeah, it is. Traffic has been super helpful, not just with this TAC plan, but I'm hearing them on the radio all day over on West Central and Old Town. They're helping out a lot. So.
Well, plus Vision Zero is a good and great thing. That is just been put into place. Just recently put into place. Vision Zero. Commander Norris, is it new or
Vision
is it
Zero?
about a
I
year?
don't know what that is. Vision Zero. I don't know what that is.
Oh, it's we had a meeting about it. We had somebody present about it 2 or 3 meetings ago, and I don't remember his name, but it's a way of oh God, it's been a long day.
That was Aaron Jones.
Huh?
Aaron Jones.
Is that his name? I thought it was something else. But anyway, Vision Zero is a good and great thing, and that's all I have going for me right now. I can get information to you. It's part of APD. It's part of traffic.
Yeah, it was. And no, actually, Martise is right. It was Nick Wheeler. I think Aaron Jones is his supervisor, or one of the other, if I remember correctly. But
well, I wrote to the one who presented for us, because it's things like if there's an issue on a street, if they're speeding through and you ask if there could be a 4-way stop there, that's the kind of thing that if you enroll the help of Vision Zero, you get a little more clout on that kind of thing. I believe that's what was said. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Have a great night, guys.
We will.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Adios.
Absolutely. Take care.